Good day, and welcome to AI Podcast at digitVIEW. Whether you're a business leader, technologist, or simply curious about what's next, we explore how artificial intelligence is transforming the way we work, create, and make decisions.
The second law of thermodynamics dictates that in any isolated system, total entropy must increase over time. This is a continuous slide toward a silent, uniform state where no energy gradients exist to perform work, and every component is locked into a state of maximum probability. However, systems far from equilibrium can spontaneously generate order by exporting entropy to their environment. This order from noise principle allows a system to utilize environmental fluctuations to find new, stable configurations. This capacity to actively resist a frozen state makes freedom the rarest emergent property in a universe that otherwise prefers randomness. Any system, whether a biological cell or a human civilization, maintains its existence through this continuous self-organization. The moment it stops adapting to environmental chaos, it loses that structural agency and is inevitably consumed by the baseline state of entropy. In biology, this resistance transitions from passive self-organization to active agency. Plants operate without a central brain, yet they demonstrate physiological individuality by sensing and reacting to environmental stressors, like shifting light and soil nutrients. This diagram visualizes a process called source-sink balancing. Using a decentralized flow of hormones, a plant dynamically reallocates nutrients from healthy source leaves to struggling sink roots. It is a form of regulated change that allows the plant to adapt its physical structure to survive. Animals exercise a more complex form of freedom called biological equifinality. If a fish is released into a river, it must reach a single end state, survival. But unlike a machine, the fish can achieve that goal through multiple, unpredictable pathways, choosing to swim deep, turn left, or stay near the surface based on the immediate environment. Whether it is a plant reallocating water or an animal navigating a current, freedom at its core is the capacity to process environmental feedback and bias behavior to ensure survival. Human history follows a similar pattern of systemic freezing and reset. This visualization plots models from the field of cliodynamics, which show that societies experience predictable waves of instability every 40 to 60 years as the collective memory of past failures begins to fade. Zooming in on the downward slope of these cycles reveals a consistent economic decay. As an empire transitions into a net importer, its domestic productive base erodes, while systemic debt and the cost of living spiral upward. To maintain control during these periods of collapse, failing empires often resort to rigid, centralized coercion. On this ancient Akkadian cuneiform tablet, rulers used divine language and legal decrees to mask a fragile imperial power that was losing its ability to adapt. Today, researchers use deep learning models and multilingual neural machine translation to decode these ancient scripts. By processing massive linguistic datasets, AI can recognize the hidden patterns of imperial collapse that were once locked in dead languages. Societies lose their freedom when they become trapped by frozen decisions, laws and infrastructures that once solved problems but have become barriers to progress. Intelligence is the mechanism that recognizes these patterns and reopens the paths that history has closed. But the barrier to freedom isn't entirely external. Gaining independence from traditional social bonds often triggers a profound anxiety of isolation, leaving the individual feeling alone and insignificant in a vast system. In 1941, psychoanalyst Erich Fromm examined this paradox, documenting how humans often relinquish the liberties they fought for to alleviate the burden of individuality. This escape from freedom takes several forms. People may submit to authoritarian forces to feel part of a superior power or adopt automaton conformity, unconsciously mimicking society's normative beliefs until they become a well-fed cog in a vast machine. The only defense against this internal freeze is positive freedom. This requires the self to act from inner conviction and spontaneity, ensuring that individual agency is not replaced by the pre-approved formats of participation found in modern social algorithms. Artificial intelligence accelerates this tension. Algorithms trained on biased historical data enable predictive policing and digital repression, enforcing a new kind of automaton conformity by tracking and controlling dissent with unprecedented precision. Simultaneously, AI serves as a powerful strategic accelerator. By acting as a thought partner that highlights cognitive blind spots, transparent AI models can help humans improve their independent judgment and liberate their logic from systemic biases. In strategic management, AI operates as a high-fidelity simulator. It can pressure test decisions against massive macroeconomic datasets and competitor moves, allowing governments and individuals to model complex scenarios before committing to a path. This technology forces a definitive choice. AI will either permanently freeze our society into a surveilled state of compliance, or it will act as the ultimate engine to advance our collective logic and autonomy. If we maintain our cognitive agency, we still face the oldest physical limitation on human freedom, the inevitable decay of biological aging and mortality. For most of history, aging was seen as an unavoidable surrender. Today, geroscience treats aging as a reversible pathology, using AI-driven aging clocks to measure molecular wear and tear with over 90% accuracy. These tools have made epigenetic reprogramming a reality. Building on the foundational discoveries of Nobel laureate Shinya Yamanaka, scientists can now tweak specific gene expression sites to restore youthful function to cells without erasing their original identity. At the same time, AI systems are identifying senolytic compounds that clear out decaying zombie cells. These treatments restore metabolic resilience and reduce systemic inflammation, targeting the shared hallmarks of aging before they manifest as disease. Targeting these biological roots allows for a transition from managing symptoms to extending the human health span. This represents a fundamental physical liberation from the boundaries of biological decay. Freedom is never a permanent victory. It is a state of continuous resistance that requires intelligent design to reopen the paths closed by nature, history, and our own psychology. We are now seeing the ultimate symbiosis of mind and machine. AI-enhanced brain-computer interfaces decode neural patterns to restore movement to the paralyzed, leveraging neuroplasticity to literally rewire the circuits of human agency. Survival in the 21st century requires us to leverage these tools collectively against shared vulnerabilities like pandemics and climate change. This is the one nation concept, the recognition that humanity is unified in its vulnerability to global crises, requiring a coordinated defense against universal entropy. We are the architects of our own autonomy. By using technology to augment our logic and spontaneity, we can ensure that our systems and our bodies transform into a more vibrant, resilient state of being, rather than surrendering to decay.
Imagine, like a sandcastle on the beach. You don't have to do anything to it for the ocean and the wind to eventually just level it completely flat.
Right, it just washes away.
Exactly. And that is the universe's default setting, constantly dispersing energy until everything is leveled out into this uniform, silent equilibrium. But building that sandcastle, keeping it standing, that requires constant active energy.
Oh, absolutely.
So welcome to your custom deep dive. Today, based on the report Freedom, the history, the meaning, the struggles, and the victories, our mission is to explore why true freedom is exactly like that sandcastle.
Okay, let's unpack this, because we're seeing that freedom isn't just a political right, it's this literal, exhausting battle against the physics of the universe.
It really is. I mean, when you trace freedom down to its absolute foundation, you are looking at a system's ability to resist that natural breakdown into disorder, right? The whole second law of thermodynamics thing. Energy naturally spreads out, structures crumble. So if the universe is naturally leaning toward this total physical chaos, which physicists call entropy, how does anything independent or, free manage to exist at all?
Well, what's fascinating here is that systems actually use that surrounding chaos to build themselves up.
Wait, they use the chaos?
Yeah, Heinz von Forster called this the order from noise principle. So instead of just getting crushed by random environmental energy, which is the noise, a system absorbs those chaotic bumps.
Oh, okay.
Right, and it uses them to shuffle its own internal structure until it locks into a new, more stable, complex form. So paradoxically, to have the physical freedom to exist as a distinct object, you actually need that environmental noise forcing you to adapt.
So physical matter is essentially forced into order by the chaos around it. But living things, I mean, we aren't just absorbing bumps, we have agency.
We do. And in biology, that agency shows up as equifinality.
Equifine.
Yeah, it's the ability to reach the exact same destination using totally different strategies. Like a rock rolling down a hill only really has one path, gravity. But a fish dropped in a river has this biological imperative to survive, yet it gets to decide how.
Right.
It might dart under a log or, swim against the current. The end goal is fixed by nature, but the path to get there is where biological freedom lives.
Okay, wait, I have to push back a little there. If biological freedom is really just picking the best survival route in the river, then are human beings just incredibly complex fish?
Yeah.
Because we clearly care about more than just not drowning.
We absolutely do. And that is exactly where our own psychology becomes a barrier. Eric Fromm mapped this out back in 1941 with his book, Escape from Freedom.
Oh, I've heard of that.
Yeah, he argued that as humans evolve past simple survival to achieve total self-directed freedom, we hit this wall of profound isolation. Absolute freedom means absolute responsibility for your own life. And honestly, that's terrifying.
It is.
So to alleviate that anxiety, we often willingly surrender our autonomy just to feel safely tethered to a group.
Wow. So we trade our freedom for a feeling of belonging? And the report actually points out how this manifests today as the marketing orientation.
Oh, yeah?
Like how you package your personality to please social media algorithms. You curate your likes, your aesthetic, your opinions, all to fit this pre-approved digital mold, just so you don't get socially isolated. We think we're expressing our unique freedom, but we're basically just conforming to the algorithm's expectations.
Precisely. And the tools driving those algorithms, artificial intelligence, they represent the ultimate paradox for freedom right now.
Yeah.
On one hand, AI acts as this massive decoder ring for historical suppression.
Right.
Researchers are using cryodynamics. It's essentially treating history as data science to let AI translate massive archives of ancient Akkadian cuneiform.
Wait, really? Ancient languages?
Yeah. By processing all that linguistic data at once, the AI reveals the underlying mechanisms of how early empires used divine language to manipulate and control populations. It basically exposes these frozen power structures.
But at the same time, that exact same pattern matching power is turned on us today.
It is. Take acoustic gunshot detectors.
Oh, yeah.
The idea is that microphones in a city use AI to identify gunshots and deploy police. But the data shows massive false positives.
Why is that?
Well, because the AI struggles to differentiate the specific audio signature of a gunshot from, say, a car backfiring or fireworks in dense, noisy, majority-minority neighborhoods.
Right, and just to be clear to the listener, we're just looking impartially at what the data in the report highlights here. The system's failure to process that audio correctly ends up triggering unnecessary heightened police activity in those specific areas.
Exactly. So AI's ability to process massive amounts of data can either liberate us from historical myths or trap us in surveillance loops.
But where AI's data crunching is undeniably pushing the boundaries of freedom is actually inside our own bodies. Because between 2025 and 2026, geroscience, which is the study of the biology of aging, is using AI to map out exactly how our cells degrade.
Yes.
Instead of just treating individual diseases, they're treating aging itself as a pathology.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, AI is identifying the shared root causes of biological wear and tear. It's helping researchers figure out how to use epigenetic reprogramming.
Which is rewriting the chemical tags on our DNA, right? Telling old cells to act young again.
Exactly. They're also repurposing drugs like rapamycin, which basically tricks the body into clearing out damaged cellular waste. By decoding the body's data, we're fighting back against that very first thing we talked about, entropy. We're fighting for literal freedom from physical decay.
So what does this all mean? From a sandcastle fighting the wind to a fish navigating a river to humans wrestling with algorithms and aging. I mean, true freedom requires active, relentless resistance.
You can't ever just coast.
No, you get frozen by physics, conformity, or time. We have to be the architects of our own autonomy, using tools like AI to augment our capabilities without letting them dictate our choices.
Which brings us to a final provocative thought for you to chew on. We are moving toward an era of brain-computer interfaces, devices that could soon act as your personalized neuroscience coach.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, actively monitoring your cognitive fatigue and subtly nudging your brain's focus back on track when your attention drifts.
But if a machine is constantly steering your attention to optimize your day, are those resulting thoughts still entirely your own? Or have you just engineered the ultimate escape from freedom?
To the arena, where progress is forged in the fire of healthy debate.
Together, we dismantle the complex issues shaping our society.
Have you ever just watched a sandcastle slowly succumb to the tide?
Oh yeah, it's kind of a depressing sight, honestly.
It is, because at first, the structure is rigid, it's highly organized, and it's completely distinct from the beach around it. But wave by wave, the sharp edges dull, the towers slump.
Right.
And eventually, the sand just disperses until you can't tell a castle was ever there at all.
And I mean, it happens to everything, right? Mountains, stars, human bodies.
Exactly. Everything. In physics, that slow, inevitable fade into nothingness is called entropy. It's the universal law that everything naturally breaks down into a state of, zero novelty. And for all of human history, we have essentially been sandcastles fighting the tide.
Mm-hmm.
But what if we are finally building a tool that lets us win? That is the foundation of today's discussion, drawn from our analysis of the source material on the architecture of autonomy. The central question we are exploring today is this. As human beings rapidly integrate with artificial intelligence and, radical biological interventions, are we achieving the ultimate form of autonomy, or are we engineering a highly sophisticated algorithmic cage?
Right, and it's a profound question, because my stance is that the unchecked pursuit of this technological emancipation is actually stripping humans of our innate cognitive abilities, funneling us toward digital authoritarianism and a psychological escape from freedom.
And my stance is the exact opposite. I argue that technology, specifically AI and geoscience, acts as an essential tool to resist biological decay and historical collapse, actively reopening pathways to expand human agency.
Well, let's look at the reality of it. Because if you are listening to this on your morning commute, chances are an algorithm determined the route you drove to avoid traffic, right?
Sure.
It curated the music you're listening to, and honestly, it probably suggested you listen to this very show.
I hope so.
Right. The convenience is undeniable, but I come at it from a different way. By merging so intimately with these systems, we are trading our genuine autonomy for frictionless convenience. We are funneling ourselves toward what Erich Fromm called a psychological escape from freedom. We're giving up the wheel.
It's a massive claim, but look, let me give you a different perspective, grounded right in that thermodynamic reality we just mentioned. Yes, the universe wants to pull us toward decay, but the source material highlights this amazing principle from cybernetics called order from noise.
Ah, Heinz von Forster?
Yes, proposed by Heinz von Forster, and it basically means that complex systems can actually use chaos, the noise of the environment, to build better, stronger structures. So I argue that the year 2026 represents the pinnacle of this order from noise.
Okay, but how exactly?
Well, by utilizing AI as a strategic simulator and by embracing these incredible breakthroughs in geroscience, we are exercising what biologists call equifinality.
Equifinality.
Right. We are bypassing the frozen state of our traditional human limits. We're choosing our own biological endpoint.
Look, I don't disagree with the thermodynamic premise, but it ignores a critical paradox formulated by another pioneer in this space, William Ross Ashby.
Okay, Ashby's paradox.
Yeah. Ashby pointed out that dynamic systems automatically evolve towards stable states, which he called attractors. And an attractor provides incredible stability. But here's the catch. To maintain that overarching stability, the individual components inside the system must surrender their freedom.
The operational closure concept.
Exactly. This is a concept called operational closure.
I'll be honest, when I first read Ashby's paradox in the material, I really struggled with the practical implications of operational closure. I mean, can we break that down for a moment? What does that actually look like for us?
Think of a flock of birds.
Okay.
The flock moves beautifully, right? It avoids predators as a cohesive unit. That is the stable system. But to achieve that, every single bird has to surrender its individual desire to fly off in some random direction. It must lock its behavior into the rules of the flock. That is operational closure. And I argue that as we merge with AI to solve our historical and biological problems, human beings are becoming the constrained, predictable components of a vast digital machine.
So we're the birds.
We are the birds. Drawing on Eric Fromm's framework, we are trading genuine, positive freedom, the freedom to do something spontaneous, for a highly managed freedom from discomfort.
But let's look at what that freedom from discomfort actually entails, specifically on the biological frontier. Because, I mean, let's be real. For all of human history, our absolute greatest limitation has been physical decay.
True.
You cannot exercise any freedom to do anything if your biological hardware is failing. And in just the last couple of years, geroscience has effectively turned aging from an inevitable destiny into a treatable pathology.
I don't deny the medical marvels, but
We need to look at how they work, though. We aren't just treating symptoms anymore. We have AI-driven aging clocks like Grimage and Dunedin Pace.
right.
And for those unfamiliar, these aren't just like fitness trackers. They read the methylation patterns on your actual DNA with 94% accuracy to tell you exactly how fast your body is biologically wearing out.
Right, the diagnostics are incredibly precise, I'll give you that.
But it goes beyond diagnostics into intervention. The material discusses epigenetic reprogramming, inspired by Shinya Yamanaka's factors. Think of this as a biological reset button. We can now tweak how our DNA is read and tell an old cell to act young again without erasing its core identity.
Using AI to find the targets.
Exactly. Clock-based AI systems are currently identifying compounds that clear out senescent cells. These zombie cells that stop dividing but refuse to die, causing the inflammation that drives aging. By clearing them out and repurposing drugs like rapamycin and GLP-1 agonists, we're stopping the chain reaction of decay. I mean, that is the very foundation of expanding human agency.
Okay, look, a longer, healthier life is undeniably a triumph of science. But I'm sorry, I just don't buy that this equates to an expansion of human agency.
Why not? You have more time, more energy.
Because let me tell you why. What good is a perfectly rejuvenated, biologically pristine body if the mind operating it is basically asleep at the wheel?
Asleep at the wheel? That's a bit harsh.
It's accurate, yes, through cognitive offloading. The source material presents really alarming data on this. Frequent use of AI tools negatively correlates with critical thinking abilities, particularly in younger demographics.
Well, negative correlation doesn't always mean causation.
But we are outsourcing our innate sense of direction, our logical deduction, and our problem-solving grit to algorithms. If you never have to navigate a complex, frustrating problem because an AI provides the synthesized answer instantly, the neural pathways responsible for that cognitive heavy lifting begin to atrophy.
I think you're looking at this the wrong way.
We are building immortal bodies, but we are hollowing out the human intellect. We are losing our internal navigation.
You're assuming cognition is a static muscle that just weakens if it isn't lifting the exact same weights it did 50 years ago.
It is a muscle.
But I argue human cognition isn't disappearing, it's restructuring. Let me offer an analogy from the material to clarify how this works. Think of a plant's physiological individuality, where hormones dynamically coordinate resource balance, right?
Okay.
Think of the human mind like a vast company. For centuries, our brains had to spend almost all their energy working on the factory floor. Rote memorization, basic math, manually gathering information. Now AI is working the factory floor.
And what happens to the human worker? They get laid off?
No, they get promoted. We are moving past traditional educational frameworks like Bloom's taxonomy, where basic memorization is just the base level. AI easily handles those lower-order tasks. This forces humans to climb what the material calls a vertical helix of metacognitive learning. Our cognitive burden shifts to the executive suite. We now focus on design, knowing what questions to ask the AI.
Right.
We focus on monitoring, checking those outputs for hallucinations or flaws. And we focus on integration, synthesizing these massive data sets into original reasoning. We aren't descaling, we are upgrading our operational level. We are delegating the mundane so we can operate entirely in the realm of high-level strategy.
Okay, let's pull on that thread, because that is a very rosy view of human behavior.
Is it?
Yes, you are assuming millions of people are suddenly going to act as the enlightened CEOs of their own minds. But what if the manager forgets how the product is actually made? When people outsource their logic to an algorithm, it scales up.
Well, obviously it scales.
In a society of individuals, outsourcing their critical thinking is uniquely vulnerable to macro-level manipulation. If our minds and bodies are being fundamentally altered by this collaboration, how does it affect the historical life cycle of empires? Because when I look at the macro level, the surrender of agency becomes glaring.
Actually, the macro level is precisely where AI proves its worth as an architecture of autonomy. History functions as a pattern. The field of cliodynamics, proposed by Peter Turchin, uses mathematical models to show how societies reliably destabilize every 40 to 60 years.
Right, because generational memory fades.
Exactly. We forget the collective trauma of past failures, we let our guard down, we overextend our resources, and the social fabric disintegrates. It's the sandcastle washing away. But AI provides the mechanism to finally break out of this historical loop. The material points out that we are using deep learning transformer models to translate ancient Akkadian cuneiform and Korean Hanja.
Okay, and how does translating dead languages stop an empire from collapsing today? Seriously.
It proves the unmatched power of AI's pattern recognition. If an AI can scan thousands of ancient texts and find the hidden economic and social variables that preceded a Bronze Age collapse, it can theoretically scan our current economy and spot the exact same variables before our modern society collapses.
So it's an oracle now?
It's predictive power, and we can apply this predictive power to modern governance. The material notes a massive jump from 700 to 2,133 U.S. government AI use cases between 2023 and 2024 alone. By automating complex public health data and resource distribution, we create a proactive state capacity. We finally unfreeze the historical mechanisms that have doomed every previous civilization.
You look at that spreadsheet of 2,133 government AI programs and you call it proactive state capacity. I look at that exact same spreadsheet and I see the foundation of a digital surveillance state.
Oh, come on.
No, I fundamentally reject this optimism. The material explicitly warns that the rapid adoption of AI in the public sector lacks transparency and accelerates the distance between the governed and the government.
But state capacity, if directed well, strengthens the democratic fabric. It creates stability.
The evidence on the ground points the other way. Look at algorithmic bias in the criminal justice system.
Okay, there are flaws.
AI tools trained on historical policing data are simply replicating past prejudices. They cement discriminatory policing into the code itself. And look at predictive surveillance. Systems like acoustic gunshot detection have produced tens of thousands of false positives, which disproportionately terrorize majority-minority neighborhoods with hyper-militarized police responses.
Those are implementation issues, though.
Or look at facial recognition. It's enabling governance to track dissidents with terrifying precision. This isn't breaking the cycle of empire. It is giving the empire the ultimate tools to enforce operational closure on its citizens. It is the architecture of repression.
But you are highlighting the misuse of the tool by flawed human institutions, not the inherent nature of the technology itself. We have to separate bad policy from the system's fundamental capacity to generate order.
You can't separate them because the tool shapes the user.
And that pulls our debate inward, which is where the real tragedy of this dynamic is occurring.
What do you mean inward?
If the state is perfecting control via algorithms, what is happening to the individual psyche under this constant invisible pressure? This brings us to Erich Fromm's concept of the escape from freedom.
Right, we mentioned this earlier.
Fromm argued that true, unmanaged freedom is actually terrifying. It means you are entirely responsible for yourself, your choices, and your isolation in the world. So people naturally seek out mechanisms of escape. They want an authority to tell them what to do. They fall into the marketing orientation.
And you believe an algorithm is the new authority.
It is the perfect friendly authority. It accelerates our escape from freedom exponentially. We see what Fromm called automaton conformity everywhere today. We turn ourselves into commodities packaged for algorithmic approval.
Well,
Recommender systems on our phones don't just passively show us content, they actively brainwash users. They learn our psychological vulnerabilities and feed us personalized stimuli. The result is expressive obedience.
expressive obedience.
Right. People think they are exercising individuality, but they are only performing their identity through highly constrained, pre-approved digital formats dictated by a feed. True spontaneity, acting from genuine inner conviction, is utterly lost. We just become well-fed cogs in the machine.
Look, I hear the dystopian framing, but aren't we romanticizing the past a bit?
How so?
Watching the exact same 3 television channels in the 1950s.
Because television was a broadcast, it was a static signal sent to millions of people. A recommender algorithm is interactive and deeply intimate. It monitors your micro-hesitations, how long you linger on a post to map your nervous system and predict your next move. That is a fundamentally different mechanism of control.
Let me offer a different perspective on how AI interacts with human psychology, because it absolutely does not have to be a mechanism of control. Far from enforcing conformity, AI can actually be the ultimate thought partner to preserve our logic against societal brainwashing.
Wait, a machine preserving human logic?
Yes, through what the material calls transparent AI. These are models designed to explicitly show their work and explain their reasoning to the user.
Okay.
Research shows that when decision makers, especially less skilled ones, use transparent AI, it actually helps them counter their own ingrained cognitive biases. For example, in strategic management, AI researchers scanned 40 million companies to identify investment targets.
And why does that matter for psychology?
Because it removes serendipity bias, the human tendency to rely on dumb luck, gut feelings, or social networks when making massive decisions. The AI plays a challenger role. It highlights our blind spots.
But you are still placing the AI in the role of the director. You are asking the machine to validate your thinking.
Not a director, a structural support system. Let's look at the absolute cutting edge, which the material brings up: neurotechnology, brain-computer interfaces, or BCIs.
Oh boy.
No, listen, this represents a symbiosis between human and machine that actively repairs our biology. By harnessing neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself, repeated practice with AI-enhanced BCIs can literally rebuild damaged circuits in the motor cortex after a stroke.
I'm not arguing against stroke rehabilitation.
But it goes further. Advanced AI can monitor a user's biological indicators of cognitive fatigue and modulate task demands to protect their executive functions. It functions as a personalized neuroscience coach. It actively defends our mental agency when we are at our most vulnerable.
I want you to really pause and think about the mechanism you just described.
I have. It's incredible.
An algorithm that monitors your cognitive load and modulates your tasks. A neuroscience coach that has direct, real-time access to your prefrontal cortex. That is the ultimate realization of operational closure.
I disagree.
The system regulates the component you to maintain equilibrium. How can you possibly have freedom of thought, which the material explicitly states we must prioritize, when an algorithm is managing your brainwaves? You are surrendering your mental privacy entirely to keep the system running smoothly. Central planning inside your own head.
We only lose our mental privacy if we remain passive consumers of the technology. But the entire premise of what the material calls AI-mentored humanity, which integrates sensing, reasoning, and actuation, is that we must step up into the role of skilled directors.
Which brings us to the very core of our disagreement. You believe human beings can remain the directors of a system that is infinitely faster, vastly more complex, and deeply embedded in our biology.
Yes, I do.
And I believe that is a thermodynamic and psychological impossibility. The system will inevitably optimize us for its own stability.
Well then, let's synthesize where we currently stand. Because from my perspective, freedom is not a default state of nature. Left to its own devices, nature degrades us. Entropy degrades us.
Right.
Freedom requires intelligent design. It is a continuous active resistance against the entropy that wants to freeze us into decay. Whether it is through Gerald Therapeutics clearing out senescent cells to give us unprecedented health span, or AI upgrading our metacognition to break the historical cycles of societal collapse, technology is the vital pattern generator. It keeps the human system open, adaptable, and capable of generating novel futures. We are exercising autonomy on a scale our ancestors couldn't have even imagined.
And from my perspective, true freedom lies in positive, spontaneous human agency. It is the messy, beautiful capacity to act from genuine inner conviction, not a predictive model.
Okay.
If we rely on algorithms to govern our societies, predict our crimes, do our critical thinking, and even modulate our cognitive fatigue, we are risking a comfortable, frictionless escape from freedom. Digital conformity and over-centralization are the attractors we are being pulled toward. We might be building immortal sandcastles, but we are locking ourselves inside them.
Yet, despite this deep division in our views, we do find points of convergence in the source material's roadmap for the future. I mean, we both acknowledge the absolute necessity of prioritizing ethical transhumanism and freedom of thought.
We do, and we agree on the importance of the one nation concept discussed in the text.
Exactly.
Using AI as a compass to point toward shared interests and unified responses to global vulnerabilities, rather than using it to play zero-sum geopolitical games. If we are to survive this integration, humanity must remain the skilled directors of these tools, consciously mitigating the de-skilling of our own minds. We cannot allow ourselves to become mere data points feeding a black box.
Absolutely. It comes down to whether we use the noise of the universe to generate a higher order or let it wash us away entirely. And that is a question that extends far beyond the bounds of this discussion.
Truly.
As you, the listener, go about your day, as you interact with recommender systems or read about the latest breakthroughs in biotechnology, you must decide for yourself. Are you acting as an architect of autonomy, using these incredible tools to forge new paths against the tide of entropy? Or are you slowly, comfortably, becoming a small cog in an automated machine?
It's a lot to think about.
There is so much more to explore in the material regarding the profound paradoxes of freedom. But for now, think about that sandcastle. The tide is always coming in. The real question is, what kind of walls are you going to build?
The future is here. AI podcast at DigitView.
This is DigitView.